Okay, so we're here at a beautiful place called Lake Baikal in Siberia, Russia. And this lake is very special, and we'll get into why. I'm doing this video as an Origins of Life video. What I'm really saying here is I want to offer a third option to evolution and creation. But it might not be far off from what the Bible states. The Bible basically does state that we're out of the clay. And where does the clay come from? It comes from the Great Lakes. So now, when I say Great Lakes, I don't mean literally the Great Lakes. I'm saying that one of the Great Lakes is considered this class of lake. It's considered a deep lake that has special types of water in it. And what I mean by special types of water, I mean caltrates. Caltrates is what actually is our atmosphere. And right now, they did some testing in Antarctica, and the caltrates are not in the ice. They're in the water coming up from Earth. That means Earth is manufacturing a new atmosphere, okay? And we're going to get into all the specifics, but when that ice melts, that beautiful new atmosphere is going to be released, okay? And we're going to get into pole shifts also in this video because we have to, but this is a positive video, and the reason it's positive is because it's about life and literally our roots and knowing our house, the house that we live in, and who our true mother is, which is Earth, but Earth is the universe and is creation and is God. So, but we have to understand a little bit more of the specifics so we could, end these differences between, religious wars, society, I'm better than you and you're better, all that really, when we find out that we're all from one mother and her name is Mother Earth, I'm hoping that at the conclusion of this video, we all literally understand that she's alive, that we have to protect her with everything we've got, and and try to tie some of this stuff together for everybody. So basically, as part of this, I basically said to myself, okay, well, if the Earth is making life, then where's the umbilical cord? How does it actually do this? And that brings us back to the galactic plane. And that gives us back to where's all this energy come from, period. Okay? So to get to the conclusion and the understanding, we have to understand energy. Okay? So everybody's heard of a binary, like always two suns, or, they always use the word binary. Okay? But where's the one in the middle? Okay? So what I'm going to say here is the reason that there's a binary first is not because there's a binary first, but there's something called dark energy in the middle that you don't see, okay? So it's really dark energy 1, 2, 3, 4. So really 5 points that are the first points of a universe. And I mean a whole universe. And you say, well, wow, how could that be? And I'm going to say, no one understands dark energy and dark space, dark energy and dark matter, okay? What it really is, and I am personally 100% sure of this, or 99.9% sure of this, but let time tell, okay? But I am personally convinced that hydrogen, small, and hydrogen big. And you say, well, what do you mean hydrogen small? I'm saying hydrogen at 2 different light speeds, literally from 2 different universes. Hydrogen, the faster it goes, or anything the faster it goes, the smaller it gets, okay? Well, you say, well, why? Well, because mass is equal to E equals mc squared. So E is equal to mc squared. So, c being, the speed, then the faster it gets, the heavier it gets, and then the smaller that pressure makes it, okay? So if you got a really small hydrogen at a really fast speed striking a hydrogen going at a really slow speed, it could fit inside, okay? And when it happened that way, what would happen would be it would stretch it and literally turn it inside out, and they would transfer that velocity between them. So slow and big would become fast and small, like that. Okay, um, you know, like a jellyfish. That's probably why jellyfish are the first things that the worlds create. Um, and that is very interesting because if that were true, which I believe it to be, you wouldn't see space, even though it would be all around us. And it would swim literally like a jellyfish, which would explain how water gets to the tops of the mountains, right? Because literally the magnetic field enters the side of the Earth, right? And then goes out the pole. And you say the pole, and I say, yeah, which is what we're standing on, an ancient pole. And the reason this ancient pole is so big is because this is probably the first one. And I'll explain why the older ones are bigger. Well, I'll explain right now. Part of this overall spoon theory, by the way, spoon is, space out of nothing, which can you imagine? When this thing happens, the torsion between two different universes or two different light speeds between these particles really pulls space out of nothing. That's why it's a vacuum. People don't understand the vacuum. Okay? The vacuum is because it literally is creation pulling space out of nothing. Okay? And the reason that we all, from every race, can say, okay, a puppy is beautiful, an Oriental woman is beautiful, and all the models, the better their symmetry, the more beautiful we rate them, sort of. Okay? That's because the building blocks for everything are perfectly symmetrical because it's two of the same, just at different speeds. Okay, so that's basically, a big thing. So I'm gonna say also the reason, again, that this lake is physically the largest is since the theory is that we didn't get into this part of it yet, but let's just say that the galactic plane is like the spinal column between multiple universes. Okay, let's just say that for now. Okay, and let's just say that all planets have to be born on the galactic plane because that's where the information is genetically, the genetic information in the form of magnetic fields. Okay, for the whole multiverse. Okay. And basically what Earth is an encoder, okay? An encoder basically gets the information, knows how to read it, it processes that information into these deep lakes, which literally are connected to the core, okay? They have to be. The reason I say they have to be is because the magnetic fields come in the side of the planet, but you don't see them because they're dark energy and they swim like jellyfish and they push the water to the tops of the mountains, come into the center, okay? And they split at the equator, and some of the magnetic field goes to the goes to positive right, some goes to positive left. Okay, so it's neutral in the middle, positive left, positive right, and that's different than north-south. North-south is driven by the galactic plane. We're always pinned to that. Okay, and we have to be because that's the overall neutral of the entire multiverse. A lot of power there. Okay, it's also when we pass it that our north-south or positive negatives have to flip. Okay, but anyway, back to the original issue. The reason that this guy here is so big, and probably the first one, and science tells us it's the first one, is probably because this when our sun, which by the way is a binary, okay, when our sun achieved fusion, okay, then it achieved a supergravity. It had to pull our planets with it. So the big mess that you see with all these moons and collisions, that's not how it started. That was what happened when our sun achieved fusion. And those collisions, one of them is missing. In other words, all the planets have a pair because remember they're in binaries. One of the matching pairs is missing, and actually two, Jupiter and I think Saturn. But there's two missing, and possibly more that they may have struck the sun. Okay, and that would have knocked us off our birth canal, the galactic plane. So the first pass away from the galactic plane would have left a tremendously large lake. Okay, because when that energy comes out of the goes into the side of the planet and out the pole, just like electrolysis, if you don't have zinc plates on a boat, which is a whole another topic, but it'll basically rust the boat. Okay, and the reason is because um, basically hydrogen's also a carrier atom. It likes to carry things. It likes to attach to things. Okay, and so it carries a little bit of mass with it, and that's what little by little, it carries a little bit of the material out of a region. So over millions of years, you get a lake that's literally thousands of feet deep. Okay, and literally connected through pathways and micro pathways all the way to the center of the Earth, so that when the Earth passes a galactic plane, it encodes the information, and get this, at certain levels of the lake, it has different pH levels, and there's a level where it's actually around 8.5, which matches the placenta. The placenta is a different pH than the rest of the female body, almost no matter what she does. Okay, health-wise. Of course, the better you eat, the higher your pH. But why are we trying to get to a higher pH? Because we were born at a high pH, and that's where we're the most healthy. Okay, so this explains a lot of these issues. So aside from that, we'll look at the caltrates that have been recorded. That's the atmosphere, and let's talk about how that works. Okay, so basically, we go through the galactic plane. The Earth decodes the information. It starts making new life. Okay, it produces that new life in little eggs that might not look like eggs. That might look like cocoons. We don't know what they look like. We haven't seen them, or maybe we have, but we don't know it. And then there's a huge die-off as far as the archaeological timeline. We can see that the evidence is always there, and then we come through these extinctions, and then all of a sudden there's this whole different group of living things. And why is it different? Because the Earth knows what is needed during that cycle of herself, and so that's what she produces as a mother. Okay, a loving mother that gives us everything we need: the trees, the water, beautiful water. Which, by the way, water has memory, and it's basically 3D paper that the decoder. Did I say encoder before? I said decoder. Decodes as far as the galactic genetic material, that's riding in the form of magnetic waves. Okay, which we know that's possible because you're going to hear this on a magnetic sound wave that carries information. Okay, so we just can't decode this information. We just don't understand it. Okay, and it's hard for us to decode it because it's at a hybrid light speed. It's being carried by space itself, and space itself is from two different dimensions, so we can't see it or feel it. But we know it's all around us like water, but we can't touch it. Okay, so and that water and that energy is a tremendous energy, and that's what really gets the sun created. That's what makes the Earth. All this is created by converting really two atoms of hydrogen back into one. Okay, so atomic hydrogen. Okay, so it's basically we're creating it. The planet is creating it, and it's making hydrogen, and that hydrogen is fueling the sun. Okay, so the gas giants, Earth, and the byproducts are helium. That's why you have hydrogen and helium in Jupiter. So you could see how it all works, right? You basically have, in a nutshell, space. Then you have planets that convert the space to gases, and then you have those gases and other materials. The Earth can produce anything. Okay, she's a very dynamic producer of even DNA. Okay, but you have these hydrogens being produced by the gas giants, and you see them fueling the suns, and all the percentages matches. The percentages match. The hydrogen in Jupiter matches the hydrogen in space because it has to. It's all the same. So there you have basically that, but and you understand now why this lake is the largest, because it's probably the first lake that when we came off the plane. Okay, but I put together a graph to show all these classes of lakes, which are probably past poles, and they're all long and thin, okay, which would make additional sense. Might have something to show you, which makes additional sense because here's a postcard that I'm gonna send to my mom. Which, hi mom. They're all long and thin like this, okay. But if you were to take I'm gonna see if I have a pen here. I can't find one right now, but if you were to take a pin and put it through this hole, okay, and the Earth were to come off the plane and go like this, you would get a keyhole effect like this, okay? And you would also get this rotation because it doesn't just go up and down like this, it actually spirals around the plane. You're getting that spirals. And the middle still here. So you're seeing that magnetic field literally cut these lakes out, okay? And the reason that the Earth gives you the seasons is because the Earth is pinned straight up and down to that plane. Plane is this way, and the sun is coming in like landing on a runway, and the runway is the plane, okay? And so it's probably coming in at 23 degrees, which is basically our seasons, and that's most likely what gives us our seasons, okay? And the reason these things have never been really completely explained to anybody is because people haven't put it together. And the reason that we're doing this video is we want to put all these things together for folks, okay? So now let's talk about Tesla, okay? I think everyone will agree he was the greatest, or one of the greatest. And he basically said, okay, you know, if you can understand 3, 6, and 9, you would understand everything, basically. I'm not quoting him perfectly, but that was his just. And why was he? And I'm going to say that if you take the frequency of the galactic plane, okay, and convert it to a wavelength in a base 12 system, you get 369. Okay, so the wavelength 369, 3 equal different. It is the key number to DNA. It is a frequency converted to a wavelength, which is something physical in size. Okay, and you can look at the whole overall situation and realize that it's all about life. Okay, so now we're going to get into life and consciousness. Okay, or we should say it's all about consciousness. Life is about consciousness. We want to know and feel and understand our house, which is what this video is about, right? Okay, so now imagine that you're in the middle of the nothingness, okay, and somehow 2 of the same particles strike each other, and one entering the other, okay, and out of not even dimension, no dimension, okay, consider it 2D, okay, but they strike each other and they create a 4-dimensional space, okay. 4-dimensional mean you could see in it and in the depth and the our 3D, like we would say. Okay. Now, the second that happened, it would create a supermagnetic field in compared to the nothingness, which would be immense as far as we wouldn't be able to comprehend that. But at that moment in time, that one would create a magnetic field that would go boom, boom, and then you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are like, it's a biblical sign. It's a cross, right? With the first point in the middle. The second that circular cross was made, the very split second that it was made, you would have an equation, and the equation would say, okay, where do all the other points go? Because you want to fill in space, okay? So the thought process would be, okay, well, maybe one goes to between 1 and 2. So then you have, and then the next point goes between 1 and 3, and then the next point maybe goes between 1 and 4, and the next one maybe goes between 1 and 5, and that can be computer modeled. But then it gets more complicated because now you got to remember 5 points and what goes in between all of those. And then it gets even more complicated, and it's exponentially growing the mind of the universe until it achieves consciousness. And the consciousness is beyond comprehension because we're not talking about the number of planets in the universe. We're talking about mapping the number of atoms that create the space before the planets even arrive or are made. Okay, and that is just incomprehensible. But it's even more than that because there's multiple universes, and it's more than that because I had a dream, and because I asked a question, and sleeping on these giant mountains and being in the area, and the Lord knowing that you're studying this thing, and in a way, I think He wants people to know, where they're from, so that, I mean, if you take someone and they don't know where they're from and you spin them around, they might as well have Alzheimer's and be disabled, And I'm not saying that society is disabled, but I'm saying it's not good for us not to know. Okay, so anyway, basically in the dream, and it basically the answer was, interestingly, it was a illustration. It said drill a hole in the ice because the tractor was stuck. Make the wheel oblong by strapping things to the wheel, which would be an elliptical orbit, and put the wheel through the ice into the water. And the water is the mind of God, only energy. So it's not really water, but it's like water. And it flows to the lowest point. We can consider that to map out the universe, you have a magnetic field, low point. So it would literally hit all the low points, but that's a very complex equation, which you can understand basically a water maze that achieves consciousness. Okay? And that's how it was explained to me. And then the information is stored beyond the cold layer, which would be, I mean, we all know space is cold, right? So space is cold, even with all this heat, the sun's, all the energy that everything's producing, it's still just a few degrees above Kelvin, absolute zero. So, and the answer is that the energy is stored beyond the cold layer so that it's never forgotten. And it doesn't matter. You say, well, my light won't get to the cold layer for so many millions and billions of years. It doesn't matter because once it's there, it's always there, and that's beyond time. And the Lord can read the information beyond time, which means He can go anywhere in the timeline and make even a correction. So that's pretty amazing. So you can have a change of heart, and He could change your whole life, and all these things. Okay, so I made a map that shows all these deep lakes and where they are, and interestingly, a lot of them are located in areas where there was past advanced civilizations, and that explains a lot, because we wonder how, an advanced, civilization, got to Easter Island, or got to this area of South America, or the pyramids got to North America, So there's, or even the great stone civilizations, the earliest ones here in Russia, Egypt. A lot of people don't realize that the Sphinx was defaced, and a lot of the elongated statues, which may have been the ancient Great Pyramid civilization, the statues are not there. So it could have been, that Sphinx resembled the elongated heads that match what a lot of the statues of the older Egypt. It's also if you take a 4-leaf clover and bend it down, you get a pyramid. But a 4-leaf clover also resembles these 4 primary magnetic fields of the universe, which also resembles the shape of the hydrogen at certain points in this jellyfish form, but it's a geometric form. It's a little bit more triangular at one point. Okay, so really, the pyramids had to have been dark energy collection devices, and that could explain if this ancient race that was still created by the Earth, they're not aliens, could move those great stones. They may have had power and control over this gland in the mind, like their pictograms are showing, or hieroglyphics are showing. So a lot of these things. Now, let's go back even further. These giant round stones, which are by another great lake near the tip of South America are all over, the Central American regions. Okay, and there was recently a NASA space mission where they recorded one of these round stones moving. Two different photos didn't match, and it's amazing. But these round stones, before the sun was born, could have been the eyes and ears of the stone Earth, because a stone Earth could be conscious, and that is a silicone-based encoder, okay, which is what the computer is that I'm speaking to you on right now. It's a silicone-based, at one point could be a life form, Basically, if you took that formula that I just talked about and computer modeled it, that would be consciousness, and the computer could be consciousness, okay? So you could see how this builds and how this could be. So let's think of the big giant picture, okay? Think of the universe as a magnetic field, galactic plane, and then two other magnetic fields underneath it. So consider it like an apple, seed, or a four-leaf clover, and then that plane down the middle, okay? Now I want you to take that same image and think of the old-fashioned, and if you're young, I'm sorry for this example, but a cassette tape, which is square, and it has two little things that turn. Boom, 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 okay? Now, I really think this is how it works. We got two cassette tapes, boom, 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 with the two tapes running down the middle, and the heads that read it, that is a galactic plane, okay? And then when our planet passes that galactic plane, it's able to decode that information, which is basically shared between multiple universes. And very, very interesting is that our DNA, the information is grouped in groups of 8. So histone, one DNA strand wrapped around both. Isn't that interesting? The same exact architectural model in each group of our DNA. It's almost like a universe of information, okay? So grouped just the same way that the information has to be decoded and sent, encoded and sent on the galactic plane. Another thing that we have to consider is that if the galactic plane connects multiple universes, the plane itself could have different densities and different types of dark energy in it as well. So the reason that our frequency could be increasing more and more as we hit the most dense area is because that could be a different type of energy from maybe the earliest system in the string, okay? Which I'm saying we have to consider that. There could be multiple types of hydrogen, or space, I should say, molecular hydrogen in the galactic plane. It's just something that could be and has to be considered, okay? Regardless, we should be trying to decode that information and understand it, and understand how the Earth decodes that and turns that into life. Okay, so you have to understand. You have to basically say that outside of our universe, there could be another universe that feeds us information through the galactic plane. But if that's so, how do they see us? Do they see us as a black hole as well? And why are the giant black holes looking like universes? In other words, they're not round. They're shaped like a universe, right? Okay, and they're even known to outgas hydrogen of their own, which would make sense because that would be the cycle where that hydrogen would come out, come back into its own galactic plane, and then literally be forced at a different light speed to create more space, okay? So you could see these cycles, and it's interesting, but even more interesting is the plane that we see, the flat plane, lines up with the black hole. So you have this galactic plane, black hole, which I'm suggesting, I personally know it as a universe and that there are no black holes, but people have to warm up to that idea, okay? All the facts point to that, okay? So you have basically universe, 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 universe to infinity. And as the center one gets larger, it blows them all up. And that's inflation, right? So it's basically continually building, okay? And it could be that, I don't know what the equation is going to finally work out to, but it could be the number of histone groups, could be the number of universes that we are made of as well, okay? So another interesting thing about our DNA is the crossing point. The crossing point of when this, basically our DNA divides, okay? The crossing point is likely, what happened when there was the original creation of the first space. Like we said, one atom going to the other. There had to be a cross of energy, And, oh, by the way, the CERN system, if you look at how it's structured, it's basically four separate, in the beginning stage, four separate coils that are capable of really mirroring what's happening in these four reals that we just talked about, okay? So CERN modeled this model, okay? This model of the universe, okay? Now, there's a lot of evidence that shows that the center of the Earth is water and hydrogen, and there's a material called ringwoodite, and it's beautiful. It's made of, it's blue, okay? And so they've discovered that there's actually 3 times the amount of oceans that we see in our oceans in the Earth, okay? And, again, the only safe way to drink water is not out of a pipe, because it has memory, and that's not a good memory for the water or for you to drink, but out of a clay vessel that's pulled out of a well. So all of our energy should be, now that we understand all this, to clean up the entire Earth, okay? Understand that all this water is coming from the center out, and it's all water, and it's all at certain frequencies, and it's all part of us. It's what builds us, okay? And that we have to keep that water in clay, which is what we're made of, okay? And it is biblical, and we need to understand these things, right? We need to go to the science level of understanding, a deeper level of understanding, okay? Another interesting point is the circadian rhythm, which is the length of the day. That's determined by the amount of heavy water that's in our bodies, okay? So where is the only place in the world that you can find heavy water? Guess. These pole lakes, because they're so deep that they actually get to heavy water. As a matter of fact, some of these lakes are heavy water mines that are used at nuclear reactors. But the ingredients are there to have localized, natural nuclear reactors in the Earth, okay? So, but the planet's not made from that. Okay, the planet's made from really, a cold fusion process that actually a scientist named by the name of Stephen Earl Jones really he's retired now, but really was outspoken about. Now they recently grew a chicken, in a bag. Okay, and people say, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And I'm saying the whole chicken was made in the egg here in the Earth, okay? A special egg. The energy for the mitochondria comes directly from the heavy molecular hydrogen, which is energy, which fuels everything, directly because there's so much energy in the world and deep in the Earth when you go through the galactic plane that you don't need an umbilical cord. And a lot of people don't realize that the water in the placenta is largely from urine. Okay, and the pH, again, it matches this lake, okay? So the amount of heavy water in our bodies is only available at certain depths of these lakes, and that would be the planet's way of knowing and putting into us, our bodies, that the rhythm of sleep and wake time, okay? So there's other things that have been being noticed. There's jellyfish that have been noticed in freshwater lakes, and also if you look at when a baby is born, okay, the you have basically uh, the cell of the embryo first starts out as two, but I'm suggesting that there's the first one's between the two. You can see it's almost like it gives a consciousness to the cell, and then once that happens, they all those cells die and they become part of the cell wall. And that's interesting because, like I said, the universe model is that no information is lost, and every astrophysicist will say yes, the universe never loses information. And here we're seeing a perfect model of a miniature life form, a miniature universe, storing all of its information in the cell wall. Okay, and it's almost like that the original step was just to understand the life in that region that it's in, and the pH and everything, and to know that this life form could go to full term, and then all that information stored in the cell wall. It's also interesting that the same experiment has been conducted on cancer, where they put cancerous DNA in the center of the cell, and a healthy cell wall corrects the cancer. It's almost like the cell wall is the intelligence of the cell, okay? Similar to the immune system of the brain. There's a very thin layer that goes around the brain that they found is what controls the immune system of the brain. So science, the understanding of these basic principles is going to really open up a basic, whole new science to every science, because understanding the basic fundamentals unravels the whole situation. But even more interestingly, the shape of the head this way looks like the universe going down. And the two older lobes are probably, like I said, when you had 1, 2, 3, and then 4, so 4 might have been is literally split seconds, but still earlier than the rest. So the older lobes, you would say, would be on the older side of the universe. And everything maps out perfectly. Even the center most, important and precious part of the mind, okay, where they say all the information runs when we pass, okay, is in the region when you make a transparency, which I'm going to show you. It lines up with the universe within the center of our universe, okay, which is where we send our information. Okay, yeah, and our universe, you see just the middle, but imagine a giant waveform that you don't see down the middle coming this way, okay, and that our matter is just laying in between those waveforms. So you have which is a four-leaf clover, which when you bend it down is the pyramid, and then in the middle you have our universe between those energy waves, and right down the exact middle is the information superhighway, which is the galactic plane. This also explains the Big Bang. See, the Big Bang is also about, it has to have a beginning and an end. But this is really this is really, the first point of space through the magnetic field, okay? And then that propagated everything instantly. And that explains what the Big Bang doesn't explain, because nobody can explain the instant space, okay? This does, okay? So there's... because again, there's immediate fill-in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Consciousness. Stored the data. Okay? Roll it out. Share it with others. Create life. Decode it. Planets. Different classes of planets do different jobs. Gas giants make hydrogen to fuel suns. Planets make life. Okay? Okay, so there's also a beat to the universe and a sound. People don't understand an echo. An echo is kind of like a mini molecular hydrogen maker, because it's coming back, And where do you have the most echo? In a mountain range. Why do you have that? Because there's so much magnetism in a mountain range. And mountains are ancient life. They were once the only life on Earth, okay? Which also, by the way, that's why the timeline of the universe is missing like a big chunk, because they don't record life before the sun's being born. That all has to be filled in. All that data has to be filled in. Okay. I like to mention Paul Marmot. He's also passed, but he did a lot of work on molecular hydrogen, and it's just beautiful work. And Paul Marmot, if you want to research him, of Canada. Or nothing's more important than understanding our origins um, and our house. Okay, but there's something called a polar shift that you may or may not have heard of, but I recently mapped out the amount of earthquake activity between 1970 and today. Now, you might not realize this, but Richter scale can be converted, cannot be added. Okay, the only way to know really how much energy is being created and to get a really good look at that data is to convert all the events all the way back to 1970 into joules, which is energy, or watts, or some sort of energy form. So having done that, it's alarming to see what really is happening from the earthquake standpoint. And it's also alarming when you look at the water movements because they coincide with what a clockwise earth jog looking at the center of, say, South America. Okay. So now that's something that none of us have any control over. Okay. It's really a beautiful thing because we can maybe witness in our lifetime new life coming out of Antarctic. Okay. But what I am concerned with, and I want to bring attention to globally, is that there is definitely chemtrails, and chemtrails are being put out there to cool the planet. Now, what caused Mars really to go extinct and lose its atmosphere is that the poles never de-thawed, okay? So when the pole shift happens, the poles end up at the equator, and they're supposed to rapidly de-thaw. In other words, the planet right now is supposed to be getting warm, and we shouldn't be trying to change that artificially, because you got to realize when this happens, the magnetic fields loosen because there's got to be a realignment, which means the pressure of how much air per square inch reduces for all living things, okay? And Mother Nature is engineered to release new atmosphere that's trapped under the Great Lake of Antarctica and release that into our atmosphere and to replenish it. If we artificially cool the planet, we can delay the de-thawing of the Arctic ice. And that could hurt so many people. I don't want to get into, the ramifications of this. And so this has to be, I hope, understood by all the media outlets. They have to understand this, okay? They have to realize that this is literally, it affects everyone. Every single person, okay? So we really have to understand the big picture and understand the ramifications of our actions and not make, mistakes that could be literally beyond comprehension, if I'm correct. If you want to look at some of the Oklahoma earthquake data graph-wise, you can Google that. And also, if you look at the extinction graph that we have here, it basically matches the trajectory of a to and fro of a galactic plane, because actually it gets harder to live on the planet and colder as we get real far away from the galactic plane, and that's the ice age. So there's a lot to know here and a lot to learn about the cycle of our planet and how it's affected, by the universe itself. Like a pole shift is big news and it's something that's almost unimaginable. But the bigger news here is to understand our origins, I think, because it would be even more tragic that we go through a whole nother cycle of humanity and we still don't know how we're made, where we're from, how the universe works, how the planet works, how our house works, right? So please try to spread this word out. I really hope in my next video to explain the entire decoding process of how the DNA is literally decoded by the Earth. I believe that information is, I believe that that's possible to be done, and I hope to do that. And if you're a scientist watching this, I would really like to work with others as much as possible. It doesn't matter where you are, the computers can join us, okay? And I thank you for your time, everyone. And And I hope this was helpful. Okay? God bless. Oh, I should just show you. Oh, it's beautiful, right? Okay, signing out. Take care.